All right, traveling fisherman. I've got another really cool review for you on a pretty new product, the Baits Seaborn Salty 150. Uh, this is one of the newest reels that I picked up. The old Baits Salty 150. There we go. Can I see it there? This thing is pretty sweet. It's on the higher end of reels that you're going to pick up. I mean, I guess you can spend as much or as little you want on any of this stuff, but retail cost of this guy is around $330. And why are you asking that it's so expensive? Well, it's a high quality reel, and it's made to take a licking and keep on ticking, as they say. One of the things that makes it high quality is the thing is machined, the frame, out of a solid one piece of bar stock aluminum. So you're probably asking, well, what does that mean? That means, well, bar stock means basically they have a solid bar of aluminum, and they put that thing in a machine, and they machine out the solid piece of this frame and then go from there as far as the other components are. So, I mean, the frame, you're probably not going to be able to bend this frame even when you're cranking in a big monster fish on a 150 size reel. Also, this thing's got 20 pounds of drag. 20 pounds of drag. I don't know if there's another 150 size reel that has 20 pounds of drag on it. So it's made to handle some pretty big fish, even though it comes in a pretty small package. It's got an oversized handle, which is really good for line pickup. This particular model is the 7.1-to-1 gear ratio, which means for every one turn of the handle, you're getting 7 revolutions on the spool. So it picks up a good amount of line, especially with that oversized handle. They do have 2 models of the Salty 150. The other one, its gear ratio is a 6.3-to-1. I wanted the 6.3-to-1, but they were sold out of it when I bought it. So I got this because since it's a smaller reel company and a newer reel company, it'll go where they're in stock and then they're not in stock. In stock, not in stock. So when I saw that it was in stock, I was like, okay, I'm going to pick this thing up, even though they didn't have the exact one that I wanted. And so far, I've been pretty happy with it. It's got 10+1 ball bearings, so there's 10 bearings and then 1 handle bearing, I think is what that means. And not gonna lie, real smooth, super quiet, super quiet. You can tell when you pick it up and start reeling that it's a higher quality reel. It's got a watertight drag system, which helps out in the salt water, so you're not getting water into your drag and corroding stuff in there. It's got anti-corrosion components all throughout the whole thing. I didn't mention before, the Baits Salty, they have some other models of reels. The Salty means that it's rated for saltwater. So you've got no problem using this thing in saltwater, brackish water, fresh water. It's a good one to take on like a multi-species trip. You know, you're going to, I don't know, Costa Rica or something like that, and you're going to be fishing a little bit inshore for baby tarpon and snook, and then you're going to be going into freshwater for guapote, rainbow bass or something. You know, you don't have to take different reels and worry about having a saltwater reel and a freshwater reel. You could take this and use it for both on one of those trips. It's not a monster reel. You know, it's a smaller reel. It's super compact. And its line capacity is 140 yards of 12-pound test mono, which is not a huge amount, and 190 yards of 30-pound braid. So I wouldn't recommend this thing for, you know, monster fish, or if you're going to a place where you can run into 20-pound plus peacock bass, because if you're using this thing to throw a little bit bigger baits, which you certainly could, if you're making a long cast, your long cast is already, I don't know, 150, 200 feet, something like that. And then what happens if you get a grab right in the beginning of when you start to work the lure in? A big peacock can go on a pretty big run, and pretty soon, if you spooled this thing up with, let's say, 60-pound test on one of those trips, you're pretty close to being run out of line at that point right away. And fishing with a buddy of mine, actually, while I was guiding down there, he had that exact same thing happen. He was fishing with a Shimano Curado, I think the 100 series. It could have been 200 series, I'm not sure. But he hooked a big Peacock 19 pounder, and as soon as the thing hit the water, he gave the lure one crank, and that thing hit and took off. And he's fighting it, and all of a sudden, boom, the thing is off, and looks down, and he sees, the line going into the water like it broke the line. And luckily, I was able to see that the line was right there where we could still see it being taken away from us slowly. And I told our boatman to get a little bit closer to the line. And at that point, we're only by paddle. We have a motor also, but I think he was a little hesitant to start up the motor. So he started paddling towards it, and I jumped off the front of the boat. I was able to swim out to the line, grab it, and then give it back to my buddy Mark. And the idea was to retie it onto the what we thought was the broken line. We thought there was a knot or something at some point in the line, but it spooled him. It spooled him. It took all the line off the reel, and like I said, it was at the end of a long cast. And right then and there, I was like, well, I don't think you want to use 100 series or maybe even 150 series on fish like big peacocks, big Payara, anything that where you're going to be making halfway long casts where you need relatively strong line where the fish is going to run, because you're going all that way on a trip like that. Even though it might be more comfortable to throw a smaller reel to work it all day long, you don't want to get spooled by a fish. So choose wisely on where you're going to use your smaller reels versus your bigger reels. If you've got to gear up and use kind of 16, 80 pound tests, you probably want a reel with a bigger line capacity. That being said, this thing does have 20 pounds of drag, which is more than a lot of larger capacity reels that you would be taking down on some of those trips. So keep that in mind. It's a balancing act on any of these things, on give and take. Obviously, this is lighter, so you're going to have less weight overall on that you're going to be packing, but it's going to have less line capacity, but it does have a really good drag. So keep that in mind. It comes with a custom neoprene case, which is really cool. That fits onto the reel very nicely and protects it from sand and dirt and any of that stuff. Obviously, if you spend $330 on a reel, you want to be able to protect it and keep it as nice as you can, as long as you can. And so it's a good idea while you're fishing in some of those places. Like in Brazil or Colombia, there's a lot of sand on the beaches. If you're walking the beaches or it gets windy in the evening and it's blowing sand all over the place, when you put your tackle away, it's a good idea to slap a reel case on it so the sand and stuff doesn't get into it. And also, the box that it comes in is a beautiful box that's like laser cut foam. The thing fits perfectly in there. It looks really good. I mean, obviously, when you're buying a reel, you don't really care about at least me, I don't care about what the box looks like, but they've kind of dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's with all the components of the reel, all the aspects of it, the packaging, the case, the reel itself, the handles, everything is, top notch. I've used it primarily in Wisconsin and northern Michigan for bass, pike, smallmouth, largemouth. I haven't caught a muskie on it yet. I'm not really throwing muskie baits, but if one grabs whatever I'm throwing with it, then I'm sure it can handle it just fine. But as far as throwing really big baits, probably not recommend it. It casts well, but not fantastic. And I don't know if it's just me, but I haven't been able to super fine tune it and get it so that it's casting smooth and really not backlashing. And when I say backlashing, it's not great big ones, but little ones. So yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that, but I've had some, maybe it just needs to be broken in a little bit. But so far, you get, the occasional overrun in it where it's just a couple of loops over the spool where you got to pull it out real quick, but then you're back fishing in a second. So yeah, bass spinners, jigs, crankbaits, all that stuff. Cast really light baits super well. Haven't had any problems throwing lighter lures except for the occasional little overrun like that. But, nothing terrible, no great big bad backlashes. Oh, I didn't talk about the handle before. The handle's got these really nice laser engraved foam grips on there, like that cool wave pattern, which is pretty nice. Also, you can micro adjust the drag. So each time you turn the drag, I don't know if you can hear that. You hear a click for each turn. And also the cast control, spool tension. Not sure if you can hear it. You can also, each individual turn, you can hear a click with that. So that helps with your adjusting, and you know how much that you've adjusted it. Also, you've got the access port on this side. You've got a little release that would be locked, that would be open, that allows you to open it up and access the side panel and adjust or grease some of the stuff inside here. Your dual cast controller, magnetic cast controls right here on the side. And it goes from one to 14. You've got 14 different measured adjustment points that you can adjust on that thing to kind of fine tune your casting. And like I said before, I haven't been able to fine tune this thing perfectly yet. It could just be that I'm still kind of breaking it in and there's a little bit of a adjustment period before it starts going kind of perfectly. But I've been happy overall so far with it. Obviously, when you feel it, the quality of the thing is really good. It's smooth reeling, and it casts smoothly also. But like I said, I have had a little trouble so far with backlashes, and we'll see. I might do another one in another 6 months or something, updating it to see if it's kind of broken in and stop doing that. I've kind of had that before with different reels. What is it good for and what is it bad for? We talked about that a little bit already. For most of your freshwater stuff, this thing's going to be perfect, absolutely perfect. It's perfect for bass, pike, maybe spring muskie with little bucktails. If you're wanting to use a bait caster for trout or jigging up for lake trout or something, it's going to be okay also. Obviously, if you're going super deep, may not be the best if you're fishing for something that runs super far. Your brackish stuff like snook and tarpon, maybe not big tarpon, but this is a good reel for casting into the mangroves. You've got that 20 pounds of stopping power on your drag where you can really turn the screws. International stuff. I think this is perfect for guapote. My next trip that I do for rainbow bass, I'm definitely going to take this one. Guapote, I don't know if you guys have ever fished for them. It's a really strong fish, even though they don't get that big. I mean, a 10, 11 pounder punches way above its weight. They don't go on really big runs, but they're usually by cover, and they really try to get back into the cover when you hook them. And this thing with 20 pounds of drag and being real smooth, you can lock this thing down with your thumb, but it obviously helps to be smooth and have a really good drag. 20 pounds of it, I'm sure this is going to be a really good guapote reel. Sea trout, you know, that kind of thing. Anything brackish, saltwater is good because it's protected for salt water. So a little bit about the pluses and minuses of this thing. The pluses, obviously the looks. It looks awesome. It's beautiful. I don't know if there's any other reel out there that's got kind of this blue, I don't know what you would call it, like a blue-gray, a smoke blue color. It looks really nice. And then the accents with the other components that are silver on there. Yeah, and oh, also I didn't mention, I haven't taken this thing apart yet, but from what I understand, all metal components, no plastic stuff inside there, which is a big plus because if it does have 20 pounds of drag, then the overall tension that you're going to be putting and torque on some of the stuff inside of this thing when you're hammering some big fish, it's going to be pretty high, and you want to have components that are going to be able to match that drag. So all metal components from as far as I know. So that's another plus to the quality of the reels. All the components are metal. That bar stock aluminum frame, the construction is top notch. All the components are good. Looks awesome. Every I is dotted, every T is crossed. You know, the grips are great. It's even got a little bit of that laser engraved foam right there on the free spool. It says Seaborn Outfitters. You know, it's cool. They've thought of almost everything that they could think of with this thing. Minuses so far would be obviously the price. $330 is a little bit expensive, but yeah, I mean, you get what you pay for sometimes. If you really want a high quality reel, you're going to have to shell out a little bit more money. The casting hasn't been 100% yet, and as I said, it could just be it needs a little bit more of a break-in period before it really starts to get smooth. Then another thing that I would put on the minus side would be to take this thing apart, you need star bits, which is great because when you get the star bits on a star screwdriver or Allen wrench or whatever you're going to call it, it really sits in there well and unscrews nicely and tightly. But not everybody's got star bits. So in order to take this thing apart and mess with it, you're going to need to buy a couple of different, star bits to be able to service this thing. And that's it so far for this thing. I've used it a bunch so far this summer, been super happy with it, and I'll keep you guys updated on any trips that I do with it. I think I've got a trip coming up here to Asia for some interesting fish, and this is probably going to be one of the reels that I take, maybe for snakehead, maybe for yellow cheek carp or wolf barb or something like that. A bunch of new species that I've never caught before. And so I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to test it, put it through the ringer, and see how it does. So that's the Bates Salty 150. And do I think you should get it? Depends on what you're going after. But as far as I'm concerned, it's definitely a good reel. Test it. Let me know what you guys think. Have a good one.